Inside a Ryder van was a powerful bomb made of a deadly cocktail of agricultural fertilizer, diesel fuel, and other chemicals. Timothy McVeigh got out, locked the doors, and made his way to a getaway car, and at precisely 9:02 a.m., the bomb exploded. Within moments, the surrounding area looked like a war zone. A third of the building was reduced to rubble, with many floors flattened like pancakes and dozens of cars incinerated. The Oklahoma City bombing affected our view on terrorism and alerted us of the idea of domestic terrorism in the United States of America. Timothy McVeigh, who had become a part of an anti-militant movement on the American right, was convicted of the crime, and he was eventually executed in 2001. Most Americans, however, continued to consider terrorism something that mainly plagued other nations. Few thought very much of it as an important concern in their own country. One of the many results of the terrible events on 9/11 was to jolt the American people up out of complacency and alert them to the presence of continuing danger. That awareness increased after events like the Oklahoma City bombing and 9/11. The date of the bombing was very significant. It was the 2-year anniversary of the final day in the federal government's siege of a heavily armed religious compound in Waco, Texas. The week-long confrontation of the compound had played out on live TV and finally ended with a raid, a fire, and the deaths, mostly from smoke inhalation, and 86 people, 27 of them were children. According to the government, FBI agents were attempting to rescue the children and others held inside against their will by a drug-taking, gun-toting cult leader named David Koresh. Members of this religious cult, called the Branch Davidians, were living and praying together peacefully in anticipation of what they believed to be the coming end of the world. The federal government saw the situation differently and premised the siege on suspected weapons, drugs, and child safety violations. 2 years later, after the Oklahoma City bombing, Attorney General Janet Reno said she ultimately regretted the Waco siege. Waco proves to be the deadliest encounter between American civilians and their own government since 1890. The Oklahoma City bombing human toll was immensely devastating, with 168 souls lost, including 19 children, with several more injuries. It is known as the worst act of homegrown terrorism in our nation's history, coming on the heels of the World Trade Center bombing 2 years later. This event was the most devastating incident of domestic terrorism in our nation's history. The shock of this event was magnified by its location in the very center of our country. The effect of the bombing was far-reaching, extending well beyond the borders of Oklahoma. It created mass casualties and injuries, affecting not only the immediate victims and survivors, not only the Oklahoma City bombing community, but the entire United States. The Oklahoma City bombing affected our view on terrorism and alerted us of the idea of domestic terrorism in the U.S. The Oklahoma City bombing and the Waco siege were very controversial and heavy events that weighed on the nation and had a deep effect. These events helped Americans realize that domestic terrorism was a real thing and a big problem.